Good morning, lovers. It's Vanessa here, and I wanted to record a quick podcast for you. And I'm going to start actually with a Bible verse. I was reading this the other night on my Bible app, and I decided to share it yesterday inside the Take Your Power Back Now community. I started a community. And it was just such an interesting conversation that I decided I would share it here with you. And it's a really powerful, simple Bible verse. It's in John 4. And it goes, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love." And so I brought this up because it's kind of profound, and what does this bring up for you? That's kind of how I started the conversation yesterday. And it was so lovely and vulnerable and real. Just having space to look at where we stumble in fear in our lives. And, I was having a conversation with a friend in Hawaii. They called me up on the weekend, and we were talking about, confronting our fears. And I was sharing some stories about, how I was so afraid last year when I went on this big trip to Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, and they were like, "You afraid? Are you kidding me? Like, you're just like Miss Fearless." And I'm like, "Oh, heck no. I'm like afraid all the time." And I've been really practicing like confronting my own fears and also confronting other people with the truth of how I feel. And so I thought I'd just share some of these stories with you. So last year, I was renting my house on Airbnb, and I decided I was going to start automating all of the water sprinkler systems for the flowers around my house, on the decks and in the pots, in order to be able to do that. Well, holy smokes, what a learning curve. I discovered I am like a water automation genius, okay? And that was like really scary, and like didn't know how to do this, and YouTube videos and asking questions and going to the store and going to Ace Hardware like 12,000 times. Done. Went on this big trip, and I came home to this beautiful, like explosive garden with huge zucchinis and flowers everywhere. I even forgot what I'd planted and came home to all these beautiful zinnias. And it was like, automating your water sprinkler systems is a lot like automating your business. Creating these systems. And I've been talking a little bit about funnels and flowers, but that was kind of, scary. That was a new thing. And how often what is it for you? What are the things you're afraid of doing? And are you confronting yourself in those moments with the truth? And so this year, I'm still tackling scary things. And, it might sound radical, but now that it's been about 4 years that I've put all of my courses into Kajabi and actually figured out how this thing works, okay? Like, what a learning curve. It's the most amazing platform in the world. It's a CRM. It sends out emails. You can have sales pages, checkout pages, a community, your membership site, your course content. It's awesome. And so the other day, I actually deleted 140,000 people off of my email list several years ago. And they were subscribers. They just hadn't opened an email in a while. And I was like, well, we're not going to pay for that. Let's just delete them, and I'll deal with it later. Okay, fast forward like 2-3 years. And I'm like, okay, it's a Friday night. It's a long weekend. I think it's like Victoria Day weekend. And I'm attacking this. And I'm like, okay, let me upload, first of all, you can't upload 140,000 email contacts in one swoop. You can only upload, I think it was like 50,000 at a time into Kajabi. Oh, you can't upload it all together. You've got to. So here I am like in CSV land, splitting up, okay, 50,000 chunks, and then, okay, split each one into 20,000, 20,000, 10, and upload those. And okay, screwed up the first batch. I didn't, the first name didn't merge in the field. Oh, the second batch, I figured it out. And so it's like this incredible, like doing the scary things and learning along the way. And I often share this principle with people that the confidence comes from the doing. And I'm still learning. And I'm even, I'm a student, I'm a lifelong learner. And I've joined a program about like how to sell courses, right? So I'm in the Telegram chat and I'm celebrating with them. I'm like, woohoo, I uploaded this 50,000 person email list, and there's a copywriter on the team. And I was like, how would you re-engage a list of like 50,000 people? And she's like, oh, I'd send 2 emails like this, 2 emails like that, and 1 email like this. And big broad strokes. Do you have any templates? No. Okay, so I just wrote the emails. So she's like, hey, would you like to, I'm celebrating with her in the Telegram chat. And she's like, would you like my feedback on your emails? And at first I was like, I think I'm such a badass copywriter. And then I'm like, Vanessa, why don't you receive and just say yes? And, you actually admire this person's copywriting skills. She's giving you some good tips. Why don't you just copy your emails, put them in a Google Doc and share it? So I did. And she actually came back with some amazing feedback, like amazing. And I actually ended up using some of her headlines. And what that brought me to is this idea that we're always lifelong learners. We're lifelong learners in any endeavor that we are really kind of obsessed about, personal transformation, online marketing, flowers, cooking, creativity, like check all those boxes for me. I'm obsessed with all of those things. And, funnels, flowers, online marketing, systems, and spirituality, and research all these things. And it was such a liberating concept, to receive and to ask for help, to receive and to acknowledge, hey, you're a lifelong learner. And so the other thing that I'm learning about is baking sourdough bread. Okay, this is, wow, what an experience. Making a starter from scratch. The first batch of bread turned into I don't know. I just put it into cupcake tins. Actually, it turned out. But you shouldn't use like all whole wheat flour if you're going to make sourdough bread. Anyways, it's like a whole process. So I'm in like another new sea of learning. And the other area of my life that I'm still learning is about flowers. And I have these peonies in my garden, and it's 3 years. And I'm like, why haven't these things bloomed yet? And I discovered phosphates, 0, 45, 0. You got to give these things phosphates. Holy smokes. So I put, doused everything with phosphates this year, and it's blooming. It's actually the first time in 3 years, these peonies, I'm going to put a picture, they're unbelievable. They're blooming in the garden. And it's like, you're always a constant learner. And I think that perspective allows you to be human in the process of learning. It's okay for me to learn as I grow. You don't have to have it all figured out. And that's kind of what I came to, even in this whole email launch and launching these courses to my list and uploading new people in the email list. And oh my gosh, the email segmentation. And if they click that, it goes here and unsubscribes from that, subscribes to this. Like, I made so many mistakes. I learned so much, and I became a freaking ninja. And I was so proud of myself. I felt so empowered. I was like, who cares what everyone is doing on a Friday night? I am attacking something that has overwhelmed me and kind of scared me for years. And wow, look at this. Look at what's come from this. You learn so much from the doing. The confidence comes from the doing, not the thinking about the doing. And, on the inside of the Soul Sister Mastermind, I thought I would share some wins with you about what's been going on there, because it's radical. And one of the things we were talking about the other day is this idea of our intuition, following our intuition, and it being a superpower. One of my clients has decided, you know what, I'm going to quit this thing that no longer lights me up. I've been thinking about this forever. I don't want to do this form of business anymore. And so she says, I'm going to follow my intuition. I'm just going to, put that to rest. And the next day somebody comes around and calls her up and offers her a multi-million-dollar deal. I mean, wow. Like when you close one door, you open another one. And how scary is it for a lot of people? It's just as scary to say no to something that's always been reliable, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's like it's not our full expression or full purpose or full yes, it doesn't have all the juice, and we kind of shy away from really the big juicy thing because it's more comfortable to stay in the uncomfortable because we know it. And how when we honor our intuition, she was like, it's pretty scary. She was talking about it for a couple of weeks, and then she just pulled the trigger. And the next day, here comes I can't even, if I told you how many millions of dollars this deal is, you wouldn't even believe me. It was like outrageous. So we were celebrating that, really celebrating her honoring her intuition. I have another client who, we were talking about in the terms of like manifesting and making intentions. We can make an intention for the what, like how we want to feel. What is the thing that we want to create? How do we want to feel? What is the state that we want to enliven, embody, experience? But we're not allowed to say the how. Okay, we're not allowed. Like that's God. That's not us. And how oftentimes we try to control the how, And so this one client calls me up and says, my business is doing so well. I had this one lady refer me some business, and I thought it would be a few $1,000s a month in business, and it turns out it'll be closer to $1 million a month in business from one referral client. Can you imagine? I was like, holy smokes, let's celebrate that. Wow. She's like, I don't know what to do. I went out and I bought myself a Rolex. I was like, okay, yeah, like poof, holy smokes, right? And so how oftentimes, and I'm bringing this conversation up because it really is a conversation about trust and faith. And I notice both in myself and in my clients, like, okay, I'm helping you build this, sales attraction system online and helping with mindset and looking at, our inner blocks and visibility and all the feelings around sharing your story and all these things, right? And it's like, does that work prepare us for the state of believing that we can have it? And then it comes flying in from left field. And do you even care about how it arrives? Just that it arrives, right? So these are some of the conversations we're having. I had another client who is a very similar thing, made an intention to receive more money and had a person ring her up, and she almost didn't take the call because she had her own preconceived ideas about what this person was about. And so she almost sabotaged it. She almost said no to taking this phone call. And holy smokes, this person is like the perfect fit for not just one, but several of her offers. How amazing. So an invitation of what is your job? What is it that you're feeling called to embody, embrace, create? And the how it arrives is really none of your business. That's resting in faith and trust and staying, open, unattached, keeping your heart open, loving, and walking through the fear. Like, feel the fear and kind of do it anyways, right? That's really, for me, this really interesting space and conversation about, are we acting in faith? Do we have trust? Is love leading our lives, or is it fear? And that's ultimately, I think, the biggest, not obsession, curiosity, like interest for me, of looking at how we, surrender, have faith, trust, and let love lead our lives. And many, many years ago, when I first started Take Your Power Back Now, I learned this technique, which really showed me just how much of my life was acting from ego, with these protective mechanisms of wanting safety outside of the self, control outside of the self, validation, love, or approval outside of the self. And when I really started diving into this process, it's like an inner breakthrough process, and the whole goal is that you source love inside of yourself, and it's always there. It never goes anywhere. It's what we always already are. And I mean, if you're talking about God, God is love. And so I began teaching this to several of my clients, and that's really the secret. That's the secret to seeing women show up in a very different way and tackle their fears. And having trust and faith and following their intuition. So I had another client who had to deal with a family member in addiction. Really, really gnarly. I'm not going to get into details. And her big win was, I'm dealing with this really hard situation with a family member, and I'm really just celebrating the level of peace that I have. It is unbelievable. And it's because of using this process. And I mean, what a win, what a huge win. So it's not always this like financial goal. The living a peaceful life, having that inner freedom, not being ripped around by fear. Check that box. That's a win in my books every day. For me, peace is priceless. And I think another really big, potent and powerful piece that I want to share with you is a documentary that I've been watching. Holy smokes, it's like a spiritual experience watching this series called The Chosen. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's free, and it is the life of Jesus, like brought to life. And I watched it twice. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3 seasons of this. Season 4 just came out. Everyone's been waiting for it. I've never been a religious person, but always very curious and researching the truth in various areas. And a pastor had told me about this, a good friend of mine. I have to kind of rewind this because I don't know if this is going to be in the next book or something, but a pastor friend of mine, I met this guy, an old pastor dude, a couple of years ago at Grocery Outlet. And I'm at the grocery checkout line, and he looks at me and he's like, "Hey, you don't have any hair on your toes. You mustn't be from around here." And so we started laughing, became friends. And he phoned me up this December and said, "You know what? Listen, I'm old. I'm 79 years old. I know we were supposed to go horseback riding. It never happened, but I have this saddle and I don't use it, and I want to give it to you." And I was like, okay, this kind of, and listen, I have a whole stand for it, and the bridle and the this and the that. I even have some boots. I think they would fit you. Let me bring it over to your house. I was like, okay. So here comes Jim knocking on my door, New Year's Day, 2024, with this beautiful Australian saddle. It even has a horse engraved in it. It's got flowers in it. It's like incredible. And it was like God knocking on my door saying, "All right, sweetheart, you ready to jump back in the saddle?" And I would have it here. It's in my living room. You can't miss it. It's on the stand. And I would have these women come over for various events at my house, and they would jump in the saddle, and I'm like, watch out, that thing isn't like hooked on, like there's nothing holding it, like just be careful when you jump on the saddle. And they would take pictures on it, and it was a whole big fun thing. And I've been sharing that story with people, and many people are like, hey man, you need to write about that, like helping people radically reinvent their lives, jump back in the saddle of their life. And I thought, let me share that here because it so relates to this idea of fear. And are we facing our fears? Are we letting fear run our lives? The other thing that Jim mentioned was, hey, go and check out this docuseries, The Chosen, in the movie theater. So I went, watched it. I was like, there was one episode. It was so phenomenal. I came back home and binge watched the entire thing. And this guy, Jonathan, is the actor in this series. It is a crowd-funded series that blew up and became world famous. And I mean, it was incredible. I so enjoyed watching this. I watched it a whole second time through again. And then there was another little docu-series called Jonathan and Jesus, which is about now the life of this actor who has become like really famous. I mean, he can't walk down the street without people recognizing him. He's out doing, publicity tours all over the world. And so the Jonathan and Jesus series is like a 4 little docu-series about how this actor is like, people think I'm Jesus. I've got so much pressure out of this fame, and I don't want to let this fame overtake me. And it's a really candid kind of overview of like him with his acting coach, working through all of the stuff. And then there's a part about how, he shared this story before he was invited to play Jesus on the docuseries, which went global. He was like minus $100 in his bank account. He had $20 in cash in his hand and enough food for that day. He'd been an actor for 20 years in LA. And used to actually, like when he was a kid, used to play Jesus in the yard, okay? And here he is, 20 years of acting and doing all the things, minus $100 in his bank account, $20 in his hand, enough food for the day. And he basically just like drops down on the ground, prays to God, goes for a walk, and comes home to find 4 checks in his mailbox. And he hits record on the camera and records it as he's opening these checks and just bawling, crying, thanking Jesus, thanking God. Here he was like, what am I going to do? Basically. And all of his angst, fears, frustration, and just surrenders and says, hey man, whoa. And cries out to God, comes home, finds 4 checks in the freaking mailbox that same day, and he records it. And so you're watching this on the Jonathan and Jesus 4-part series. And 3 months after that, he was invited to play Jesus on the docuseries, and the rest is history. Just like, what a testament. I mean, it's incredible. Like that blew my freaking gaskets right there. Watching that he would even record that and how like vulnerable and authentic and real, and to share it, and what like an incredible feeling and story and testimony of, putting God first in your life, and the transformational power. Some other concepts that I really enjoyed and was kind of blown away by mentioned on the docuseries. And I've had several people, I've shared this with some of my friends, even Christians who are like super churchgoers. They're like, I never heard of this, docuseries. I'm like, oh boy, but watch it. I've had other people tell me, I tried to watch it. It just couldn't get into it. And I was like, whatever. one of the other concepts and ideas or principles that I want to share with you is that we surrender to faith, and I think that story illustrates that we surrender. It's like, hey, my life is crazy, or, I can't control this thing, or something's happening with a family member or a close relationship, and I surrender. Like, hey, God, let me put you back in the freaking driver's seat. You surrender. And I got a tattoo that says surrender with a butterfly on it a couple of years ago, 2 summers ago. And so I'm like listening, watching to this series, being like mind is being blown in so many ways. And anyways, that's just a little bit of what's going on here on the inside of my life, the inside of Take Your Power Back Now, facing all the fears. And, there's a fear that I have about talking about more biblical things or scripture and sharing that. And, I just decided, you know what, Vanessa, stop hiding that. Why don't you just let people know, And so I brought that verse to a conversation yesterday inside our community, and it was really well received, and women loved it. And the conversation that came from that, about the honesty of, hey, these are the areas of my life that I'm still afraid, or that I'm holding back, or that I'm playing small, or that I'm not trusting, and just sharing our truth with love. That's really how we bring like the secret into the sacred. And I think that's one of my most favorite things to do with women entrepreneurs is to hold space for those conversations, because there's how many times, like, where else can you have this unjudgmental, uncriticized, safe space to, like, hey, here's what's going on. Oftentimes with our friends, they have certain ideas, or our family has certain concepts, or, the ways they operate. And growth and expansion, it happens in this, it's like a flower blooming. You ever watch these like reels on Instagram? I do. I'm like obsessed with flowers. So I watch a lot of flower stuff, and, you watch like a dahlia blooming, and it contracts a little bit, and then it expands, and it contracts, and it expands again. And so, we're like that too when we're growing. There's a bit of a fear, and then boom, an expansion. So it's one of my favorite things to do, really holding safe space for women to go through that process and, confront, address the scary parts, the parts of ourselves in truth, and not from a place of like beating yourself up or adding more pressure on yourself, just like the truth, because honesty is actually kindness. That's another concept I've been talking about a lot on the inside of our masterminds and programs. It's you can either be nice and people please. That's actually manipulation, right? We don't want people to not like us. Let me be nice about this, or not say something, not to upset, or not to, ruffle feathers. But in that case, then you are kind of perpetuating the pattern by not sharing your truth. Sharing your truth and you can do it in a very kind but just honest way. That's what leads to transformation. Being nice is actually people pleasing and manipulation. And it perpetuates patterns of self-abandonment, neglect, codependency. And there's a big risk if you share your truth about how you feel. Some people may not understand you. They may not like you. They may resist it. They may not be able to meet you on that level. You may have your intuition. Oftentimes, your intuition, you kind of know. So there's a big risk in sharing your truth. But ultimately, that is what leads to transformation, right? Honesty is kind. And that's really what leads to transformation. So I hope you've enjoyed this audio. I would love it if any of these principles resonated with you, or love to hear your feedback. If, I don't know, if you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, please do let me know. You can shoot an email over to vanessa@takeyourpowerbacknow.com, or maybe or leave a comment here below on the podcast. So appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in and listening. And I hope this has been like a good investment of your time, and has filled your mind with some good things to chew on and marinate, and if so, then I will see you on the next podcast. Thanks so much. Have a great day.